Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, departing from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, was ready for takeoff. The Boeing 777, referred to as Flight N370, was bound for Beijing, China, following its usual route. As the aircraft taxied down the runway, the flight crew, led by Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah and First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, along with 10 cabin crew members, prepared to carry 227 passengers on their journey. At 42 minutes past midnight, the flight was cleared for departure, and soon after, it soared into the night sky, climbing to an altitude of 35,000 feet. The night was calm, with clear skies as Flight 370 maintained its cruising altitude over the South China Sea. As it approached the border of Vietnamese airspace, Kuala Lumpur's air traffic control handed over communication responsibilities to Ho Chi Minh Control, ending their conversation with a routine good night. No one on the ground or in the air anticipated what was about to happen. Less than 2 minutes after signing off with Kuala Lumpur, the radar signal of Flight N370 disappeared. Air traffic control in Kuala Lumpur, Ho Chi Minh, and Bangkok could no longer detect the aircraft. The sudden vanishing of the signal suggested that the plane's transponders, devices crucial for radar tracking, had either failed or were manually turned off. The aircraft had vanished without a trace, leading to a desperate attempt by ground control to re-establish contact. All efforts were unsuccessful. As hours passed without any word from the aircraft, and its scheduled arrival time in Beijing came and went, authorities officially declared Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 missing. What followed was one of the largest and most expensive search operations in aviation history, initially focusing on the waters between the South China Sea and the Gulf of Thailand, near the plane's last known location. However, the search area was quickly broadened after the Malaysian military released new information. Unlike civilian radar, military radar does not rely on transponders but rather tracks the position of aircraft through signal reflections. Military data showed that after the flight lost contact with civilian radar, the plane veered off course, making a subtle right turn, followed by a sharp left turn. The aircraft then flew back across the Malaysian peninsula before making another right turn near Penang Island, continuing on a northwesterly path until it disappeared from radar entirely. In the days that followed, search efforts expanded into the Strait of Malacca, the Andaman Sea, and the Bay of Bengal, involving numerous nations deploying ships and aircraft. Despite these extensive efforts, no trace of the aircraft was found. Meanwhile, investigators turned their attention to the plane's satellite communication system, SATCOM, which had logged activity before and after the disappearance. Like most modern planes, Flight 370 was equipped with a SATCOM system, allowing communication between the aircraft and a ground station in Perth, Australia. Initially, everything seemed normal. However, shortly before the flight disappeared from radar, the SATCOM link was cut off for reasons unknown. Yet, just a few minutes after the plane vanished, the terminal reconnected with the satellite network. This SATCOM link remained active for nearly 6 hours, during which time investigators attempted to contact the cockpit twice via satellite phone, but both calls went unanswered. During this 6-hour period, the ground station made periodic status checks on the plane, ensuring the terminal was still online. While these transmissions did not provide the plane's exact location, they allowed investigators to calculate its distance from the satellite based on the time it took for the signals to be sent and received. This generated a series of 7 arcs or rings, representing potential locations where the aircraft could have been when these signals were transmitted. After careful analysis of fuel consumption, speed, and various other factors, investigators concluded that the final transmission from Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 likely originated from a remote region along an arc in the southern Indian Ocean. Given that this area fell under Australian jurisdiction, the Australian government took charge of the search operations. Over the following weeks, the search area was continuously refined, taking into account ocean currents and updated projections of the aircraft's trajectory. However, the vast remoteness of the location meant it took 6 days for search teams to even arrive on site. The new fleet of planes and ships covered an area spanning over 4.5 million square kilometers. Yet the missing Boeing 777 remained elusive. Experts explored the possibility that the impact of the aircraft with the ocean had been recorded by underwater listening devices called hydrophones. For hydroacoustic monitoring stations did pick up sounds that seemed to align with the final satellite transmission, but further investigation revealed that the source of these sounds was likely geological activity rather than the missing flight. Flight 370 was also equipped with underwater locator beacons, each with a battery life of around 40 days. As the batteries neared expiration in early April, signals resembling those of the beacons were detected at a depth of up to 3,000 meters. A submersible spent weeks scanning the ocean floor where the signals were found, but no wreckage was recovered. It wasn't until more than 16 months later that a significant discovery was made, on the other side of the Indian Ocean. On July 29, 2015, a group cleaning a beach on Reunion Island, situated east of Madagascar, stumbled upon a metallic object covered in barnacles. This 2-meter-long object was soon identified as a flaperon, a piece of an aircraft wing. Serial numbers and internal markings confirmed that it belonged to Flight 370. Despite the fact that Reunion Island was about 4,000 kilometers from the initial search area, its location aligned with computer models simulating the potential dispersal of debris over time. This discovery ignited a fresh wave of beach searches along the shores of southeastern Africa. Investigators recovered at least 31 items of interest, including sections of the right wing's outboard flap, engine cowling, a partial door from the landing gear, and a fragment of the vertical stabilizer. Of these, 18 were classified as likely or highly likely to have come from Flight 370, while 3 items were definitively confirmed. The rest could not be identified. Crucially, none of the recovered debris showed any signs of an explosion or fire, though small burn marks were found on one of the unidentified objects. The search for additional debris was also supported by satellite imagery from March 2014, revealing several man-made objects floating in the southern Indian Ocean. Unfortunately, the images lacked the clarity needed to make any positive identifications, and despite further searches, the debris was never retrieved. A satellite image captured mere hours after the final transmission also showed what appeared to be a contrail near the search area. Upon closer inspection, it was determined to likely be the shadow of a cloud formation rather than any remnants of the missing plane. The underwater search continued for years, covering an expanse of 120,000 square kilometers of seabed before being suspended in 2017. An American salvage company, Ocean Infinity, resumed the search, but after more than a year, their efforts also proved fruitless. Without locating the final resting place of Flight 370, definitive answers about why it crashed remain elusive. However, various theories have surfaced. 2 passengers who boarded with stolen passports initially raised suspicions of a hijacking. However, authorities soon ruled out this possibility, concluding that the men were asylum seekers rather than individuals with nefarious intent. Another passenger, who was a trained flight engineer, was also scrutinized due to their potential expertise in operating a Boeing 777. Speculation about the cause of the crash also centered on the cargo, specifically a shipment of nearly 11 metric tons, which included lithium-ion batteries. A similar shipment ignited a fire that caused the crash of UPS Airlines Flight 6 in 2010. Alternatively, investigators considered an electrical failure, drawing comparisons to the crash of Swissair Flight 111 in 1998. In that case, a fire in the cockpit wiring disabled communication systems, including transponders and satellite communications. It's possible the 2 pilots of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 attempted to turn back toward Malaysia to make an emergency landing. However, no such effort was ever carried out. Instead, the flight continued its journey, staying airborne for an additional 6 hours. Some speculate that a sudden or gradual loss of cabin pressure might have incapacitated the crew. A similar event occurred in August 2005, when Helios Airways Flight 522 failed to pressurize, leading to the pilots losing consciousness while the plane remained on autopilot until it eventually ran out of fuel. Pilots are trained to handle such emergencies, with oxygen masks automatically deployed to give them enough time to descend to a lower altitude where the air is breathable. Although Malaysian military radar captured altitude data from Flight 370, the information is inconsistent. At one point, The aircraft reportedly exceeded its maximum operating altitude by more than 15,000 feet before rapidly descending 50,000 feet in under a minute. Attempts to replicate these maneuvers in simulators were unsuccessful, casting doubt on the accuracy of the radar data. If Flight 370 did suffer cabin depressurization and the pilots were incapacitated before descending, this could explain how the aircraft stayed in the air for so long. However, the changes in the flight's heading present a more complicated scenario. Simulations showed that the aircraft's initial left turn must have been manually executed, as the autopilot could not have performed such a sharp turn. Subsequent course changes could have been either manual or automatic, but for the autopilot to correct the flight's path, someone would have needed to input those instructions. In June 2014, several media outlets reported that Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, the pilot of Flight 370, was considered a prime suspect in the incident. A flight simulator found at his home contained a route ending in the southern Indian Ocean, similar to the presumed flight path of the missing plane. While there was no official mention of this in the 2015 public report, confidential documents leaked in 2016 revealed that the Royal Malaysia Police had indeed found and analyzed the suspicious route. The data recovered from the flight simulator consisted of 7 coordinates, with 2 in Kuala Lumpur, 2 in the Strait of Malacca, 1 in the Bay of Bengal, and 2 in the southern Indian Ocean. It's unclear whether these points belong to the same simulated flight session, meaning it may be incorrect to draw a continuous line between them. The police investigation concluded that there was no evidence of premeditated intent. However, the similarities between this simulated path and the presumed route of Flight 370 influenced the ongoing search efforts. Australian investigators considered the possibility that someone deliberately extended the plane's range by gliding it after fuel exhaustion. Another theory suggested the plane could have been ditched in the ocean before fuel ran out, reducing its range. Both scenarios were deemed unlikely but were still factored into the search strategy. If Captain Zahari did intentionally crash the plane into the Indian Ocean, his motive remains unclear. At 53 years old, Zahari had an impressive 18,000 hours of flight experience and was known as a dedicated pilot with a clean record. Investigators found no evidence of financial struggles or personal issues, and his spending patterns in the months leading up to the flight were normal. Despite unconfirmed rumors of marital problems, both the official investigation and Zahari's family denied such claims. Speculation also arose from Zahari's political affiliations. He was a known supporter of a prominent opposition leader who had been sentenced to prison hours before Flight 370's departure, fueling theories of political motivation. However, this has not been substantiated by the investigation. Farik Abdul Hamid, the 27-year-old co-pilot, also showed no signs of suspicious behavior. Engaged to be married and with nearly 3,000 flight hours under his belt, Farik had only 39 hours of experience in a Boeing 777. There was no evidence of discord between the two pilots, and no personal or financial issues came to light during the investigation. One curious piece of evidence involved Farik's phone. Leaked documents confirmed that his iPhone 5S briefly connected to a cell tower as the flight passed near the island of Penang. Investigators explained this as an automatic signal, not a phone call, but the reason for omitting this detail from earlier reports remains unclear. The simulated flight path from Zahari's home may seem suspicious, but it doesn't conclusively point to any malicious intent. Similarly, while hijacking theories align with some evidence, no concrete proof has emerged to support this. In fact, the final report from the Malaysian government in 2018 could not attribute the loss of communication or the plane's course deviation to a technical malfunction. Instead, investigators believe that someone manually manipulated the aircraft systems. For example, the plane's satellite communication system, SATCOM, was likely manually disabled, and when power was restored, the system rebooted. These findings, however, are far from definitive. Both the Malaysian and Australian governments concluded that Flight 370 crashed in the southern Indian Ocean, but the cause of the crash remains unknown without further evidence. More than 5 years after the plane vanished, despite advanced technology and the world's best aviation experts leading the search, the location of Flight 370's wreckage is still a mystery. Various experts and independent investigators have offered their theories on the crash. Some suggest that the plane was shot down by the US Navy, with the satellite data falsified as part of a cover-up. Others propose that the plane flew north to Kazakhstan, where debris was later planted along African shorelines. Another theory posits that the aircraft was remotely hijacked, though no commercial airliner is known to be equipped with such technology. On the less conspiratorial side, some believe the assumption that the plane flew straight toward the southern Indian Ocean may be incorrect. In 2018, a French team suggested that the plane attempted a landing on Christmas Island, which would place the crash site farther north than originally thought. The surface search of this area was conducted a week after the disappearance, but the underwater search never extended that far. As of now, the search has been suspended, though discussions of resuming it continue. For now, the fate of Flight 370 remains one of the greatest mysteries in aviation history. The disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 remains one of the most puzzling and tragic events in aviation history. Years of searching, countless theories, and yet, the truth continues to elude us. As we await further discoveries, we are left with more questions than answers. If you want to stay updated on more captivating mysteries and unravel the untold stories, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching, and let's hope the day comes when the mystery of Flight 370 is finally solved.